All right, so this is the third episode now of Comedy Catch Up, and today we're just going to talk about Theo Von on his most recent appearance on JRE, on Joe Rogan's podcast. Figured I would break it down just as a separate video because this week Theo is on not only this podcast, he also did a video with All Things Comedy for Bert Kreischer's Something's Burning, I believe, is the video with Bert Kreischer and Andrew Santino, which was hilarious. He also has King of the Sting and this past weekend, so a lot of Theo this week. And if you're a Theo fan, that's great. And if not, then you're probably really sick of seeing him all over the place this week. So this is the fourth time now that Theo's been on JRE, and there's a pretty obvious pattern that has gone on, which is that Theo likes to just play around, be silly, tell his stories and his jokes, whereas Joe usually just wants to have more like serious intellectual, or rather pseudo-intellectual kind of conversations with his guests. And so it seems like a lot of the jokes that Theo throws out there, and he doesn't really set them up. He just kind of throws them out there, just saying silly, goofy kind of things, you know. And most of the time, it just kind of goes right over Joe's head, or Joe hears it and just chooses to ignore it because it's more of like Joe interviewing Joe with brief commentary by Theo Von for 3 hours. So that seems to be almost more of the likely case, is that the jokes don't go over Joe's head. It's just that Joe, he gets on that tangent of, I'm talking about this thing, and so I want to finish talking about this thing, and I want to make sure Jamie pulls up the relevant picture or video of it before we move on to the next thing, or before you have a chance to talk about what you want to say, which obviously, you know, most people don't really, especially when you're on there with other comedians, it doesn't really work out that well, because the thing that makes Theo so funny as a guest on other people's podcasts is that kind of real quick back and forth banter, which is, of course, that's also how King of the Sting started, right? Is with Brendan and Theo just doing that back and forth, riffing on each other. And you don't really get a lot of that with Joe. He's much more, takes the podcast very serious. Now, if you go way back to like the first few 100 episodes of JRE, he was definitely not like that. It was a lot of just kind of, back during like the Red Band days, I guess, right? It was a totally different podcast than what JRE is now. I mean, now JRE, right? We're all waiting on the Kanye episode to come out, which should be, who knows, soon. And Jamie also confirmed that Mike Tyson is coming on, which I don't know how much that was confirmed before, but he did mention they were talking about things to talk to him about when he comes on the podcast. So that'll be a great one, I think, as well, because Mike Tyson has a great sense of humor. He's put out some cartoon shows and everything else, so that should be a good video coming up. I think before we get into it, you'll probably notice I'm filming in a different spot now. The chair doesn't squeak at all. I noticed that afterwards, and after throwing out 3 videos already, I didn't want to throw out any more videos and decided, fucking, I'm just going to post them anyways. I know that they were brutal to get through constantly with the ums, and every fucking time I moved, the chair squeaks. It was more annoying than Mel Gibson clicking that fucking pen when he was on JRE. So, you know, we're getting better. We're trying to make things a little bit more smooth. We'll see how it works out here. Maybe I'll keep doing it at this spot. Probably not. I'd prefer to just do them at home. Obviously, this isn't my house. I don't have whiteboards in my house. But yeah, so let's get into it then, I guess. So it took about an hour probably into the podcast before Joe finally lightened up and started going back and forth with Theo on jokes. Where the first hour, you know, Joe, he's got his, you know, basically got like his agenda of shit that, you know, these are things that Joe likes to talk about, and Joe wants to get these out and make sure that everybody knows how smart he is and all the dumb bullshit that he talks about, and so as a result, he's constantly just killing bits that Theo comes up with, right? Like right from the beginning. I mean, there were so many. One of the funny things was they're talking about Thanksgiving, Theo eating owl for Thanksgiving dinner, and Joe just thinks that he's being serious for some of these, and then eventually he kind of catches on. Maybe I don't really know what his thought process is on this. Maybe if anybody watches this, comment and let me know what you guys think about what Joe does here. Where, if you know what I'm talking about, here I'll play a short clip on the Thanksgiving bit, not the whole thing.
Egg too.
It's gross, I think.
Owls?
The meat,
Oh, you ate them, you're saying?
yeah, but
You guys ate owls?
yeah,
I don't think that's legal. You probably shouldn't say that on the podcast.
well, I didn't have a lot.
So, what the context here going on is that Theo ate 2 owls for Thanksgiving dinner, right? And then Joe goes, well, I think that's illegal, right? Theo responds, well, I mean, I didn't eat a lot of it, I mean, fuck, I don't even like owls. And then eventually Joe responds and says, he's kidding, you guys, he's kidding. God, like, Joe is worried about people getting upset at him and Theo about, like, what's an obvious joke. And he does it a few times where he has to announce to everybody that Theo Von, the comedian, is telling a joke on the podcast. Like, I mean, come on, Joe, like, what are you doing, man? Quit killing every single bit. We know he's kidding. Everything. Theo even talked about how in his first appearance, Theo mentioned when, and this is the only time I've heard him talk about this, is that after his dad died, and this was kind of a serious conversation, is that after his dad died is when he started getting into telling all these like crazy stories and making up stories. And that's kind of like how his comedy, I guess, evolved, is just all these stories. Because you kind of notice all the stories he tells about people back in the day, every one of them died. Like, he always says, it's always that the person is dead, right? I don't know why he goes and does that all the time and always says, oh, this guy died from a car accident or heart attack or something really crazy and out there. But every story that's like from history is like from back in the days. Oh yeah, I used to know this guy, Bernie, and well, he died, but back before he died, yeah, me and him used to do steroids together on the side of the highway. Right? Like, he was in the steroid joke. And he's told that, I think, on every single appearance on Joe Rogan or on Jerry, and Joe still hasn't caught, maybe, I don't know, maybe he just doesn't want to tell him, like, hey, you've told me this before, or maybe it's kind of like Joe's version of the Fritz Haber thing and everybody else, and stoned ape theory and all the other bullshit things he just repeats ad nauseum to his guests, where it's like, yeah, we all know for sure about this because you've told us this 100 times already. We all know about your bullshit stoned ape theory that nobody fucking believes it. But yeah, so he eventually tells that the steroid story, and Joe's just taking him in earnest. Like, why wouldn't you do the steroids at home? That seems like a thing you would do at the house, right? And he's told the story to you 4 times already. You're still asking him questions like this is a real serious thing, like he's actually shooting up steroids on the side of the highway. I don't know. Joe just can't keep up, I guess. Eventually, he kind of loosens up and starts going back and forth with them a bit. And Joe does have a few good moments. He's still a comedian. He can still be funny, right? One of the things I thought was kind of funny, where Joe was being absolutely serious, is when he talks about how tall he is.
I mean, this ceiling was low, you know? I mean, I'm 5'8", and I remember I'm pretty sure I could touch the ceiling.
Yeah, Joe, you're not 5'8". I mean, maybe on your Tinder profile you're 5'8", but bitch, please, you are not 5'8". We've all seen Joe pictures of him standing next to other people. I think most people say he's like 5'6" or something. I mean, I'm not tall. I'm a short guy too, but come on, man, just accept it. Accept what you are. Don't be fucking adding inches here. Maybe if you wear heels or some lifts in your shoes, maybe you're 5'8", but your old ass at 51 ain't 5'8" because you were never 5'7" even. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny. Like, I seen a few people commenting about that online too. So it seems like it definitely caught people's attention. Like, come on, Joe, 5'8". You're gonna sit there seriously? You say you're 5'8". Theo makes one of the funniest jokes I've heard ever by him. And I don't think he was trying to be, I don't think he realized how funny it was when it came out, or just how like ridiculous the question was that he said. He said it as a, to be funny, but the way it came out was just, it was hilarious. Like, I've never heard such a dumb question before in my life. I'll play this clip.
Do you think there was a time in your life you were the dumbest that you'd ever been?
Probably a couple weeks ago. I don't know.
With a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the question itself, like, do you think there was a time when you've been the dumbest you've ever been? I mean, of course. Like, if you're always getting smarter, right? What's the dumbest time you've ever been? Well, probably when you were a baby, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe Theo meant something different, and that's why Joe responded with a couple of weeks ago. Or maybe he just didn't really know how to respond to that. I don't know. We get some more drop in knowledge by Jamie, I got an A in physics, explaining how the sand on the mat works here.
Yeah.
If you look deep into this topic of vibrations and symbols that come out and like different
Explain to
light
people what
patterns,
we're talking about.
Oh, it's kind of difficult.
It's hard,
but
but I posted it on my Instagram.
It's not really that hard. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's not hard to explain because it kind of is. I guess that's kind of just assuming that people have some background knowledge on that. But it is funny. Just Jamie just kind of dug that hole a long time ago about I got an A in physics when he was. If anyone doesn't know, this is back when Eddie Bravo was on the podcast, and they're all going back and forth about these stupid ass conspiracy theories and flat Earth shit that Eddie's always promoting. And Jamie's trying to explain how the Earth is obviously not flat, and and then Jamie is actually getting upset because I mean, you eventually get just irritated by someone who's just willfully ignorant to something so obvious. He's like, well, I mean, I got an A in physics, and now across the internet. I mean, I don't know why I'm explaining this. If you are watching this by some chance, you probably know all the dumb shit, all the dumb memes and jokes around the Joe Rogan podcast. So I don't need to explain that Jamie got an A in physics. But it is fun hearing him talk about that. And Theo makes a comment about, I don't trust all that kind of stuff. And Joe comments, now you're starting to sound like somebody I know that wears tinfoil hats. The obvious dig at Edgy Bravo. Theo's perfect follow-up to this.
Would you have sex with a scientist, you think?
Yeah, like a movie scientist. Like she keeps the glasses on.
Yeah.
They're always blonde in the movies, right? No, sometimes
bit
dark
killer.
black hair too, mysterious.
I bet they're clean, too. If you fuck a scientist, dude, I bet they have a clean apartment.
Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe their fucking brain is like that.
Joe just totally doesn't get Theo's comedy style and his kind of line of thinking. Like, would you fuck a scientist? Like, he's just saying it as a joke, not would you fuck a TV scientist? Where are you getting this from, Joe? He's obviously talking about real scientists, but he's making a joke about it. He's not being serious. I don't know. And then Joe, with his pseudo-intellectual knowledge, starts going into talking about Richard Feynman, and he never read the books. Like, he never read Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, and that is, I should have looked this up before I started this, that is the follow-up to the first book, I believe, that Feynman wrote, or that's the first book, and he wrote another one they're basically autobiographies, but kind of not. The second book that he wrote, only about half of it is about him, really, kind of, and then the second half is about him, Feynman, investigating the Challenger disaster. They're both really amazing books. I would highly suggest reading them if you have any interest at all in, I don't know, people that are smart, I don't know, physics, anything. The guy's hilarious too. But Joe reads one article on some rag news site about that just cherry picked a single quote out of one of his books, and it's about him just talking badly about like waitresses. And I remember that part in the book, although I don't remember the exact situation that I was in, but Joe keeps saying that, oh, this is back when he was younger, blah, blah, blah. This is actually after his first wife died, if I remember correctly. He married twice, I believe. I really should have looked all this up before I started this, because now I'm just as bad as Joe. And I don't have a Jamie. So his first wife dies, I believe, while he's still working at Los Alamos, and the guy pretty much dedicates his life to trying to figure out I believe his wife died of cancer or something, to trying to better diagnose his wife than what the doctors are doing, because the doctor's doing a terrible job. His wife eventually dies. He kind of goes on this like free lifestyle thing where he just kind of moves around, bounces around. I think he's in Las Vegas during this incident with the waitresses, talking about cocktail waitresses and whatnot. Eventually he moves to like Costa Rica or Brazil or some shit, where he ends up, I believe it is Brazil, because he participates in Festival, I think, and that's where the whole playing the bongos thing and all that shit comes from. The guy is just such a fascinating person, one of the smartest people to have ever lived, certainly in the last century. I mean, the guy is extremely prolific. If you look up his Wikipedia page, it's almost like it's made up with all the shit that he's accomplished during his lifetime. But Joe goes on the most impossible rant of trying to discredit this guy's life and his work by just like regurgitating this single quote that's pulled from a shitty news article that's just trying to discredit him. And it's like, why are you spending so much time trying to discredit this guy on your podcast from a quote from a book you didn't even read? Like, you never even read the book. You have no information on this guy. It's like, just drop it, man. Like, stop trying to like ruin this guy's legacy over some shit that you don't even have the most basic knowledge of. You never even heard of the guy probably until a week ago, and now you're an expert on what his life was like as a child because you think he was a child when he said the comment. Apparently, I don't know, I should stop, because I just found that really irritating. If you've actually read anything about Richard Feynman, I don't know, you'd realize that Joe is just kind of talking out of his ass, and it's just kind of annoying, I guess, but that's typical Joe, right? I don't know. Let's get back into funny shit, I guess, So they both talk about Louis. I don't remember what they were talking about, though. I did a terrible job preparing for this. For sure. Yeah. So Joe goes on to talk about, that's kind of just his comedy. Louis, that's just the way Louis' comedy is, and this is just him working out shit. Basically, he says the same thing that Tom Segura and Christina P. were talking about on their podcast last week, so we don't really need to go into it. Joe and Theo basically say the exact same stuff. He's just working on material. There's no reason to flip out. This isn't what he's doing on a tour. So wait till the tour, then see what happens. So there it is. There was one interesting thing that I thought about during this, is that they are standing up for him in that this is just practice material, but also Joe mentions that he's been off for 10 months. Is 10 months? Is like the Parkland shooting bit the best bit that you could write in 10 months? I don't know. That's probably being way too overcritical of Louis, and who the fuck am I to make any kind of judgment on the guy? So let's leave that topic alone. Let's see here. Joe actually made a really funny joke about these. He kind of went on a funny rant about these people that are having natural births in like rivers and shit instead of like going to a hospital. And he ends it with a really good kind of like one-liner.
Get the fuck out of the river and go to a hospital, hippie! No, you can't have a baby in your bathtub if you live in fucking Brooklyn. Go to the goddamn hospital. It's right down the street. Don't you love your kid?
Yeah.
They figured out a better way. Look at this hippie.
This lady.
First of all, she is
Australia.
She's in Australia. Well, there's spiders that are going to crawl into her pussy right now and kill the baby before it even comes out.
They have 7 of the 8 most dangerous snakes in the world are in Australia.
I was trying to tell my friend Adam Greentree yesterday. He doesn't want to believe me.
The brown snake, the Australian brown snake, dude.
Kill the shit out of you.
Oh, kill that little fucking creek bitch.
Speaking of Australian brown snake, that's how she got pregnant in the first place. Hey.
The brown snake bit at the end. Joe that joke alone, I feel like that redeems Joe for this whole podcast for missing the first hour of all of the jokes, and then the last 2 hours of missing like half of the jokes at Theo tells. I don't know why. It's such a stupid, childish joke, but it just kind of landed right. You know? Oh, yeah. And then, I would say Theo's best, I don't know. Theo has so many great, just kind of like off-the-cuff jokes. But one of the best was definitely this one here.
While you're looking at your phone, I bet you're checking your Twitter and you're also beating off. Yeah. You're a multitasker,
but you're not going to get a lot no matter how much, how you do it.
Really?
Yeah. How much do you get? You get like a little bit.
How much do you get?
I mean, I get like
if you had to compare it to something, like a quarter.
No, probably like maybe
oh my God.
Like an 11th of a handful, I guess.
A handful. What the fuck do you think come up with that? Holy fuck. Oh man. It's funny, like sometimes I just get tired of like Theo, like his whole like that like dumb role kind of thing that he plays, because it's all a skit, like it's not real, like he's not like an actual like idiot southerner, like that's just a bit that he plays because it's funny, and so sometimes it gets kind of old, but then like he comes out with shit like this and it's like, god damn, how do you even come up with that? Where did you even think of something like that? Oh fuck. Joe had a moment of talking actually earnestly and seriously about taking care of his kids and whatnot. And then Theo kind of follows up that with...
I really believe that. I think...
Decum the dumb, brother. That's what I'm saying. Take the semen out of them. You know what I'm saying? Like at a certain point.
But here's the problem. You're dumb compared to physicists. So who's to judge?
Joe makes a good point. I mean, Joe makes a good point, but Joe makes a good point with his follow-up on that, talking about, like, well, how do you make a comparison or whatever. But the thing is that Theo's just making jokes, and Joe's still in that serious mode of, I'm talking about this, like, actual hypothetical situation of how do you decide who should have kids and who shouldn't have kids, and Theo's just continuing to just crack jokes and be funny. Yeah, so Theo, they do get off onto another rant of, I'm looking at my notes and some of the shit. I wrote down so many clips from this podcast that I can't play them all because it would just be, there's no reason for me if I just play all the clips, obviously. There's really no reason for me in the first place to be commenting on them commenting and then playing clips. But man, this is such a funny podcast. You just have to go back and watch it if you haven't yet. When I guess the thing that got me kind of going is this talking about women taking over and how they can really dominate over men.
There was no way to come without them. Oh my God, they would dominate.
We're fucked, dude. I know that's going to be the next law.
If they're really smart, that's how they would take over. chop our arms off.
Yeah,
Dude,
There's
but-
a few good bits, you know, just chop all our arms off so we can't jerk off anymore. And we're completely reliant on women for sex. So they get on to talking about basic income, and they focus on kind of weird things. And this is a subject that comes up a lot. I guess for me, I don't know why. I guess just websites I go on and whatnot for like tech articles and stuff, working in the tech industry. And people in the tech industry seem to be really into the whole basic income idea. I don't really know why. But one of the things is that a lot of people who first hear it, they think that, well, if you don't have to work, then you'll just be lazy and you're just collecting a paycheck and you're just going to sit at home and do nothing. But really, what would happen, right, is that you no longer have this stress of worrying about all the shit that you have to worry about with having a job, right? So now you can just focus on actual interest, shit that you're interested in, like this, like doing this podcast, like, or video, whatever the fuck this is. Like this, I'm trying to squeeze in after work hours and then try to edit it and do all this shit at night and then still try to keep doing all my regular work and everything else. But, you know, it's like if you don't have that to worry about, that regular 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 9 or 5 to 5 or 5 to 9, all kinds of crazy fucking hours that people have to work, then you can focus on your actual creative interests. And your creative interests can then become commercial pursuits that, you know, they grow and they become something else. And so there's a lot of value in not forcing people to do menial bullshit tasks. Like the person working, serving you food at the drive-thru might only be there because they grew up poor as fuck and they never really had a chance to move up in like their socioeconomic status. But they might also be an amazing singer who just doesn't have time or energy or a means to actually get their voice out there and be heard, where they could become extremely successful singer. You know, I don't know, it's just a bullshit example I just pulled out. Who the fuck cares? Anyways, then they go on to talk about all these jobs are going to be killed off by automation. And it's so funny when people who don't know anything about technology, they don't know anything about software engineering, programming, nothing, talk about AI and how AI is going to take over and AI is going to do this and we should all be scared of AI, blah, blah, blah. And it's always just this like bullshit, stupid ideas that don't make any sense to anybody who's ever programmed anything beyond a hello world. Like he pulls up this infographic, right? Look at this infographic. So they're showing, look at all the jobs that they show on here. It's basically all manual labor jobs, right? Those require automation now of building machines that can do this, right? Whereas what about a lawyer, right? A lawyer, you don't really need a machine. You need a computer, an algorithm that can run like a neural net type algorithms to determine how to judge a case or how to prove a person's innocence. You don't really need a human for that. Those kind of jobs, or like a pharmacist, like what does a pharmacist do? Here's my script, pour the pills into there. Okay, here's your pills. You're telling me a pharmacist, lawyers, judges, these types of jobs aren't going to be automated? Those types of jobs are so much easier to automate. There's already automation involved in fighting tickets that will automatically go through the process of filing all the paperwork you need to fight various tickets and such. So there's already a lot of automation involved in getting rid of paperwork, and kind of just the menial bullshit work that lawyers do. A lot of that prep work as well. Like maybe we won't get to the point where we automate out lawyers entirely, but we will get to the point where all that discovery phase, all that research phase will be automated out, because that's just searching through books, searching through paperwork to find the, you know, various keywords essentially, right? I'm not a lawyer, I'm talking out my ass. But there's programs, right, that already exist. There's already software that exists to do all that. So really, you're just kind of removing being an attorney, which is that stuff is usually what like first year attorneys and interns and shit do. So you're kind of just removing that layer, which people also mention that's the layer where you learn the most. So you remove that layer, and now it's going to be harder for people to learn and become proficient in that profession. But people will adapt. Another thing that's missing from that is programmers like me. Most of the shit that we do probably will be automated. Programmers definitely don't want to admit that programmers are going to be the ones losing jobs as well. I mean, one of the interesting things about software is that there's always new shit being developed, and so you always see more people to develop more shit. But if you can just start automating, and a lot of that stuff already is automated, system admins are almost a completely non-existent job anymore, for example. So, and there was actually, I was re-watching some of the older Theo Von clips, and from the first time he was on JRE, and he actually mentions that in the first one about kind of how, or was that in the first one? I don't even know anymore. I'm terrible at this. But that there's talking about Black Mirror and how there's that episode of Black Mirror, they upload that guy's public information into a robot basically to be that person's husband, that woman's husband, and how there's enough information out there of Joe interviewing people. Like, it's kind of that same thing where eventually you can build kind of like Markov chains, I guess, to interview people using Joe Rogan's voice and things he's already asked, especially since he's got a very limited vocabulary, I guess, of topics that he asks guests, right? So I guess it really wouldn't be too challenging to build a Joe Rogan robot that can interview people, because he's kind of already asked all the same questions he asks everybody and all the same topics he brings up in every single podcast. We don't really need the real Joe anymore, right? I feel like that's a good time to leave, to write this one off here. That's a good jumping off point. So, all right, I'm going to post some more videos, though, this week. The new Your Mom's House podcast, Congratulations podcast. There's a whole bunch out this week already, and right now we're only about midway through the week, so there's a lot of great stuff. I'm going to cover a couple other podcasts that I haven't so far that I think are really good, just really funny comedians. And we'll get into more Theo Von stuff as well. Talk about the newest episode of King and the Sting. And this past weekend, we also got some Church of What's Happening Now and some Burtcast to go through. And as of right now, I don't think there's a new Tiger Belly out yet. But we will definitely get touched on that one as well. So yeah, hopefully, I hope this one turned out better. I think it did. I think it turned out better than the last two. At least I, for sure, don't have a squeaky chair. I don't think it's squeaky. I couldn't hear. I'm wearing these headphones, right? I can't hear shit with these headphones on. They're noise canceling, and so I can't hear the chair. The chair is squeaking, so I had no idea the whole time. And then in the first video, it cut off like right here. I don't even know if this one is good or not yet either, because I'm literally just using a phone on a tripod and then uploading and then putting that onto iMovie to edit and blah, 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 and do all that kind of shit, because all this stuff was new. I tried a few different camera setup things, and this seems to be the best so far. I'll get a mic eventually. But right now, I'd rather get better at doing content, speaking better. Hopefully, I'll have to go back through. Hopefully, I didn't go quite as much. I don't think I did. I'm trying to be a little bit more conscious of that now that I'm actually presenting this to someone, or to you, or whoever, there it goes again, to actually listen to. And you don't realize how fucking infuriatingly annoying that is, hearing people go over and over again to actually hear it, especially when it's yourself. And rewatching these videos to edit them and such is the worst because you have to listen to your voice. And if you're not a comedian or something like these guys, you're not really used to that, like hearing your own voice, watching yourself either. That's so fucking weird and awkward. But it's getting better. And speaking of getting better, that's another podcast I'll probably cover a little bit this week because Ron Funches is pretty funny and his voice is hilarious sounding. So even if, let's cut this off. All right, thanks.